SAMdroid here, and you're watching a tutorial on how to make a simple reaction test game with the brand new object-oriented Control Python API. So, as you may have guessed from the introduction, this is a tutorial using our new API, which is a whole lot more simple than these cryptic layout codes used in the old API. Used in the socket-based API, which still works, but the new Python API, control.py, makes it so much easier to write controls. Now, before we get started, you'll have to make sure that you have control, and you can download it off the Google Play Store. I would recommend Control Beta, because that's what the API has been tested with, and also I think Control Beta is less buggy. So you can download it off the Google Play Store, and then you can see our website, and there's the beta links here where my mouse is, and it also comes with Snake pre-included, which is a fun little snake game that you can play with Control. Now, the other thing that you have to note is, of course, you have to download the Python file for the Control library, which is available off our Git. And this is in beta. We're working hard to improve it. It doesn't support everything like sensors here, but we're working hard, and unfortunately it's Python 3 only, but you know, we're also working on that. So once you've gotten the requirements, you can get started with the code. Okay, so let's get into the code. This is more going to be a code walkthrough than an actual tutorial, but I will explain the code so you can go and write something later. So at the top here, we've got from control, import star, and import time and random. Now, this is pretty basic stuff, so if you don't really know about this stuff, I recommend you go and find a Python tutorial. I'm sure there's some great ones out there on YouTube and the web. But so then, since this is a reaction game, we've got to know the time that we ask the user to press the button. So here we've got the variable st, or start time, and we're setting that to the current time. And then we've got is testing, whether or not the user is being tested now, and if they have completed the test, and running, which is whether or not the game is running. And anyway, then we start to get into the control part of it. And the control is now all very Python, and you, instead of having to write if statements and while loops, all you have to do is create a function that runs when the button is pressed, or the slider is changed, or so on and so forth, So here's our, now as you can see, both of these functions have two arguments, ci and data. Now, ci means controller instance, and that's because down the bottom here we see our controller variable, but control is multi-threaded, so you can have multiple controllers at once. We'll probably be looking at that later, but with the controller instance variable, it allows you to keep track of the controllers and get their IDs, and we're even going to be implementing the ability to change the layout on that controller. So that's an important variable. And number 2 is data, and the data variable depends on what widget you're using. So if it's a button here, the data is always in a list form, and for the button, the data is either O or 1. And the O data means that the user has released their finger from the button, and the 1 data means the user has pressed their finger down on the button. Now, one little funny thing to note is that the 1 button, it seems to get triggered multiple, the 1 state, the press down state, seems to be triggered multiple times when a user presses a button. So just watch out for that. So this is pretty simple here. It just, if the data is 1, so the user just pressed down on it, and if we are testing, we print you took X seconds to press the button. or just you took X seconds. So that's time minus start time, and then we set is testing to false to say that they've completed the test. And if we're not testing, so if they pressed it randomly, we just do nothing. And then our next function is quit, and it's good to have a quit button in your controller because it lets your user quit. So we haven't done any if statements here because it doesn't really matter, because it's not like the reaction button where they might be holding it down and release it. We want them to press the button. Whereas with the quit, we just want to quit when they trigger the button. So what we do is we can c.close. Now C is our controller, and this closes all of the controller instances, and then running is set to false, so the game will stop. Now into the setup of the controller. So first, even though sensors are actually not currently implemented, we still have to set the sensors, and the sensors are just a list. So you just have a sensor object and sensors object, and then you just put the list of sensors, and in this case it's none. I'll be covering them in a later video once I've done all the stuff. And then we set up our layout. Now there's two variables for our layout, the sensors object and orientation, and it's either orientation portrait or orientation landscape. And then now with control, there are the sort of two main UI widgets. There's the widgets, so the buttons and things, and then there's the boxes, which can have gravity, so you can have all the things in one certain box at the bottom, and you can align stuff vertically and horizontally, and you've got a lot of options there. Now, so all of the control UI elements need one thing when they are constructed, and it's the layout root. So it's really important to pass that, because otherwise it just won't work. So that's the L variable there. And then box vertical is a constant that we've got, and that just says that the box will have its elements vertically. And then gravity, none. So gravity pretty much defines where the elements go. So if it's gravity bottom, the elements will gravitate towards the bottom, and you'll have them going from the bottom. Whereas if it's gravity left, all of the elements will be on the left. So then we go layout.addBox, and it's really important to remember to do that, because otherwise it won't appear in the actual, it'll probably cause errors and it won't appear in the controller. So then we create a button, and buttons are pretty simple. They just layout, text, and then the function to call when the button is pressed, and then we have the optional arguments. So width is set to -1 here, which is actually means width fill, and we've actually got a constant for that, so width fill, which means it fills the whole width, and the same thing for the height fill. And then we go box.addB, and we don't have to worry about doing layout.addB, because the box will deal with that automatically. And then we're going to have a second box, which is going to have gravity to the bottom, so for our quit button, so which is box2 layout.add. So box2 layout, box across, gravity bottom. And then we add that to the other box, so you can actually nest boxes inside each other. And there's a lot of that in like the gaming controller, for instance. And then we create our quit button, which is the root for this button is layout, and then the text is quit, and then the function that we want it to call is quit. So it's a pretty simple button. And then box2.add quit button. And then we create our controller. So this controller object is pretty simple too. In this controller object, all we have to do is say the name of the controller to show up on the little notification and the phone, so that's reaction test, and the layout that we want the controller to use. And then extremely importantly, you have to call control.start, because otherwise it will not start and accept connections. Now, one of the great things is that control deals with all of the multi-threading itself, so you don't have to deal with that. So the actual controller runs in the background and is fully multi-threaded. So that's one thing that you can have off your shoulders when you're developing an app. So here we've just got the simple game mechanics, which are pretty much, while the game is running, sleep for a random amount of time, set the start time to the time now, say it is testing, and print a cool little word art for press now. And I'll put the link in the description because I used an online generator that was extremely helpful. And then just go while true and wait till they wait till they quit, or wait till they press the button, and then break, so stop the loop. And it'll just start again, and if they have pressed the quit button, running will be deactivated and the whole game will quit. Now, I suppose what we need to do now is do the demo of it. So I'll just save this and load up the terminal. So you can just start it with Python, but you've got to make sure you've got control started. Hopefully we'll be able to implement something that auto starts control in the Python API if it's not started, but we haven't got there yet. So you just start that up. Reaction controller started. You can now connect your device. I better do that. So just launch up Control Beta on your phone, and it's there under the name Reaction Test. You can just press it. It'll load up, and then I'll show you what it looks like. You'll see a screenshot, and so you got the big button up top, and then because one other thing that we implement that we've got in control is a weight system. So by default, everything is weighted 1. And the weight is essentially the ratio of the amount of screen size, the percentage, the fraction, whatever you want to call it. So because they're both 1, the box that the quit button is in and the press to react button, because they're both 1, they take up half the screen because it's weight over the total weight, so 1/2, which is half. So anyway, now we can play the reaction game. And you just press the button on your phone. There's not a lot of lag. And then you just press the button, and you continue doing that until you get bored. So, press the button another time. And then you can press the quit button. And it quits. So, that's it for the first tutorial for Control on making a reaction test game.